Hi all, we're going to look at another great game from the Corus A tournament, and it's a good example of how to play against the Sicilian Najdorf variation. So white was Dominguez Perez, rated 2717, and black Alexander Morozevich, 2771, the number 5. So e4, and Morozevich played the Sicilian defence. After knight f3, d6, we enter into the Najdorf variation. So black playing this a6. After bishop e3, this is kind of English attack system. So black counters in the centre with e5. After knight b3 plays bishop e6, and white plays queen d2. So white has very aggressive intentions of castling queenside, and often playing f3 and g4. And these pawns can be a battering ram against the black king, if black's not careful later. Morozevich in this game kind of delayed kingside castling. He took time in this position. Instead of playing, for example, bishop e7 and castles, he took time to actually play knight bd7, so he's expanding on the queen side quite rapidly. So this could have been quite disturbing for the player with the white pieces, but Dominguez, he kept his nerve, and after b5 he castled anyway on the queen side, saying to black, okay, you're not going to develop your bishop and castle and come and attack me then on the c file. So rook c8 and now g4. So it's all standard English attack, kind of routine moves in a way. But what we are going to witness in the next few moves is very, very far from routine. After knight b6, g5, instead of the black knight moving away or even to h5, black just counterattacks with b4. And the interesting thing here is white does not play the move knight e2, which might seem quite good. So knight e2, let's have a quick look. In this position, black actually has the very strong move knight c4, and according to Ripper, black's gaining quite a significant advantage after this, because he has the option of guessing the dark square bishop, but also maybe even stronger than the immediate knight takes e3. Is just keeping that threat, and playing knight d7. So say f4, bishop e7, and with this continual threat of knight takes e3, Ribka thinks black's doing very well here. So in this position, if we go back after this b4, the other alternative to consider is maybe g takes f6. Or knight b1, but a far from obvious move which was played was actually knight a4. So this is an interesting situation. This knight on b6 is being victimized by two whites minor pieces, but there's this threat of g takes f6. So black temporarily sacks the knight because he wants to just win this knight on a4. So after f takes e4, we have some structural change which might be important later. This semi-open f file. Black takes on a4, but now queen takes b4. So it seems as though white's being materialistic on the queen side. But as well as the queen side targets, the black king is still in the centre. How will it reach safety? In this game, as it turned out, it didn't ever reach safety. So we'll find out why. After queen c7, black threatens a mate in 1. So white parries that actually with not with c3, which might allow some sort of piece sack, but actually the more solid rook d2. So not wanting to move any pawns forward, just defending that calmly. Now after bishop d7, white plays queen a5, believe it or not. So there's quite a bit of pressure on the black position. And structurally, potentially this d5 square is going to be a good square to occupy with an outpost piece to try and minimise black's counterplay. Black played queen c6 now, seemingly, just sacking the a pawn as though it's been calculated. White dares to take that a pawn. After rook b8, the compensation black has isn't completely clear. White actually plays now rook d5, so he's clamping down on black's liberating d5 move, and also it supports in some variations bishop b5, as we're about to see. After bishop e7, white makes way for bishop b5 by first preparing that with bishop a7, so forcing this rook to move away from the b file, losing that control of the b5 square. So after rook a8, now bishop b5. And after queen b7, white is free to take this piece on a4. So he's giving up his dark square bishop though. But after these exchanges now with rook takes a7, white has a very powerful move now, knight a5. So black's getting quite harassed on the queen side, with his king still stranded in the centre for the moment. After queen c7, now rook hd1. So white is doubling up on the d6 pawn, and black dare not take this g5 pawn at the moment. Rybka thinks this will be clear advantage to white. But one of the main things I think is the d6 pawn has to be defended again. And now in this position, c4, and white has a good bind on the light squares. So this would be quite unpleasant for black. What black did instead, after this rook hd1, was actually take on b5. And after queen takes, he moved his king. So he's never going to castle. It's going to be artificial castling to try and get the king into safety. To king b1, now g6. So will the king safely go to g7? Well, first there's knight c4 to deal with. So we have here a good knight versus potentially bad bishop situation, hemmed in by its own pawns. And d6 is a clear target. So black plays rook b7 after queen a4. Now black plays queen b8. So for the moment the pawn's immune. If knight takes d6, rook takes b2 check. Let's have a quick look. Rook takes b2 check. And here, you know, black can wriggle with king g7 with a reasonable position. So white first takes time to play b3. And there's still this problem d6 pawn. Black attacks the queen. It's got one good square to go to, c6, and it goes there. Now, let's see, could black have further harassed it with rook c7? Well, actually, this was played, and white now counterattacked on black's queen. He played rook b5. So this is starting to get quite unpleasant for black, who hasn't castled yet. The world number 5 has not castled, and there's still this quite intense pressure to deal with on the queen side. After queen a7, queen d5 was played, and again the d6 pawn is targeted. Black actually plays queen f2, again kind of virtually pinning that knight, because of queen takes c2 would be very good for black. So white plays queen d2, again patiently building up, taking time to put pressure on d6 in such a way that black will have to defend. Queen f3, and now white takes on d6, and it looks as though this is what Morozevich would call an exchange of prisoners, one weakness exchanged for another, because black now has bishop takes g5. And it's here that I want you to take a very good look at this position. Take 15 seconds, please, to have a look at an amazing tactical resource which white found. So I'll stop the video now for you to think. Okay, look at the black king. It's a bit of a tactical vulnerability at the moment. It still hasn't castled to g7. There is a stunning move here which just wins outright, but it blows black to pieces. Although white, you know, has a good position anyway and could have just played more positionally with queen d3. White chose knight f5, and let's have a look at what's going on here. If bishop takes d2, let's have a look at that. Then the knight is covering that g7 and e7 squares, and this is actually a mate in 2 after rook b8, because rook c8, rook takes c8, mate. So that's no good. So what's next? Well, g takes f5. There would be rook b8 check, and if king g7 here, now queen takes g5, check, and that's mate. So that's no good either. So, okay, what can black do? So try and defend first rank. This is actually the defense in the game, and here there is again a crushing move. I'll give you 10 seconds to see if you can spot it, starting from now.